called the Q Web.
Say it again.
Sometimes called the Q Web. People sometimes think the Q Map is one thing, but I call this the Q Web to not make people confused.
So he also has a healing map, and that's part of the reason why he's here. So here we go. Let's talk about that. How long have you worked on this stuff?
Brand new
What
healing
inspired
web.
you to do this?
The Healing Web, it came to me one morning as I was waking up. I hadn't planned to do it. Just one morning as I was waking up, the whole idea came into my mind at once, and the rest of that day I was sketching out with pencil, basically something that looks very similar to this. And after the pencil version, I did like a very simple digitized version, and then it was sort of on the back burner because I'm working on a lot of different artworks. And then when I was contacted about doing this Autism One conference, and I heard that you guys were specifically interested in having this artwork completed for this conference, I sort of put this on the front burner and like turned it out really quickly between January and February. And it's done now. I think I released it as soon as it was done, so it's been available as a free download for a while. But we're going to have a poster of it soon, and as of now we just have these laminated flyers.
And he's got the best tablecloth for his setup over here. It's awesome. He makes all those connections. Just amazing. So I was really taken. I saw you on Edge of Wonder, and I'm like, we need to get that guy over here. Because you said that you were working on a healing map. And I'm like, whoa, I wonder what that looks like. Because we're all into alternative medicine. We're looking for alternative ways of healing our children. And that includes cannabis, chiropractic, more holistic ways of healing. So I was really pleased to get you. And then, you know, I don't know who's familiar with QAnon and the Patriot movement, but QAnon had talked about the Q map. And come to find out, this is the Q map. So that's like totally awesome.
Well, some people call this the Q Map.
Well, the Anons do.
It's unclear, you know, if this was associated, you know, what Q was referring to. But it's it seems like it might be very accurate to QAnon's agenda.
So where's the healing map? Do we have the healing map here? So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about how Big Pharma ousted all of the holistic medicine and kind of monopolized.
How that came about.
Like, we're not allowed to give medical advice. So, like,
no.
do they?
There's a little disclaimer here on the back that says, you know, to refer to your higher self for medical advice.
That's right.
But so if you want to go into the history a little bit of Big Pharma and Western medicine, actually, this whole upper right little section here is more about the history as opposed to actual remedies. And so we go all the way from the Knights of Malta, or the hospital, the Order of the Hospital in Jerusalem, which was sort of the apex of medicine for the Vatican during the Crusades and the Middle Ages. And that goes all the way through alchemy of the Middle Ages and then into the industrial age and the oil barons. So Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and Rockefeller sort of established what we call Western medicine today. When they were making all their money from the petroleum industry, that's how the pharmaceutical industry was born, because pharmaceuticals are made from petroleum. So they were controlling both the energy industry and the medicine industry. And at that point, they were able to basically buy all the institutions, the universities, in around the 1930s. And from then, they sort of put the kaputs on naturopathy and herbal medicine and said, basically, the only way we're going to train doctors with a degree from a university is with allopathic medicine, pharmaceuticals, PhD. What does it stand for?
Doctor of Philosophy? What?
I don't know, actually, but to me, I mean, they all prescribe pharmaceuticals.
We'll
right?
ask Dr. Judy. She's got like 12 PhDs. What does that mean? So, were you a history student? Were you always taken with history? How did you, like...
I've always been really interested in history. I mean, I went to school for fashion design and fine art, but even early in my education, I was actually writing a book about history in college that sort of, it never was completed, and then once I realized about the whole alternate history and conspiracy history, it sort of derailed a lot of the stuff I had written about in my book, even though some of it was still valid. But I had just always been a researcher on the side, and so I was really like delighted to find a way to use my artwork and integrate all my research and history as well.
Well, I got to tell you, this is just spectacular, and you're always adding to it, right? It's always growing.
Well, there's always new diagrams coming out. I mean, I think...
Like, where do you put cannabis in all that, you know?
Cannabis is here, yeah.
There it is.
It's a little bit difficult because almost every line wanted to be directed towards cannabis because, you know, that's basically a remedy for almost every chronic condition. There's definitely improvements I want to make on this one. I think there will be definitely like a version 2, probably a version 3. I think for the most part it is sort of established, but you know, there's always like little things here and there that we can improve upon. You know, the QWeb as well, but I'm working on new diagrams. The newest thing I'm working on is actually called the White Nobility Golden Dawn Map, which is basically sort of like the inverse of the QWeb. It's sort of tracking the positive societies, secret societies, and individuals that have been helping humanity progress as opposed to like holding humanity back. So, you know, you have the Illuminati, the Vatican basically stagnating the development of science and humanity, where there has been people, say Nikola Tesla, refer to the White Nobility Map, but there has been people pushing humanity forward. So that's what we're hoping we're headed towards. And so, you know, to bring attention to both sides of the equation, let people know the full truth, and then they'll know sort of where to look, where we should have gone, where we should be going.
And all this is just driven by money, that, you know, the pharmaceutical money and power. And, you know, we look at our universities.
Capitalism, greed.
And pharmaceutical pretty much funds all the textbooks in these big universities, and they, you know, I mean, what? They get like a page of nutrition and how nutrition is healing. You know,
well,
they
doctors
don't really,
aren't even really taught nutrition, is what I've heard in medical school.
So
like
we feel
there might be
they're
like
just
a
salesmen.
short course in it. But one of the important things on here that I added sort of late in the game was this rigged clinical trials.
Yeah.
Because, you know, just because there's a study on something, it doesn't mean that that's now the fact of the matter. And a lot of these studies, the people who are funding them have decided what the results are going to be before the study even gets started. You know, they start the study in order to produce a result that they want. So
and then you have
it's really hard
shadow
to know what
writers,
to trust.
so it's not very up and up.
That too. It's hard to know, even in the alternative field, like who to trust, because I think there's a lot of, I mean, I've even come upon a lot of information in the alternative field of conflicting viewpoints, and you don't know who to trust, like especially on diet. For a long time, I feel like all anyone heard about in terms of diet was that, you know, vegan is the best option, vegan's the healthiest thing.
Don't eat butter.
Don't
I never
eat butter.
stopped.
But then, you know, what I discovered early on in creating this was actually the whole philosophy of the keto diet, and even people who are on like an all meat diet. And so I didn't say like, oh, like this is what I'm going to go to now, like this is the best idea, but it's like to integrate all these different perspectives to try to really find what is the best diet for human health for different conditions. It's a question that I don't think anyone really has the definite answer to. I'm leaning towards more of like a cyclic keto diet, which is primarily keto, but then carb loading at certain points when you feel like you need it. But, you know, I'm not a dietitian.
And we've also learned from some of our people here at Autism One that the keto diet, you can do some fasting and reset the stem cell, and it leads to resetting the whole system for healing.
Yeah,
So,
definitely fasting is a component in healthy dieting as well.
of course, we're not giving any kind of medical advice. We're just pondering the possibilities.
We're just trying to be healthy for ourselves.
That's right. And our families.
And eat enough throughout the day and not ingest the poisons of Monsanto.
Yeah. Whole organic food.
So yeah, diet's a huge factor in it. I mean, basically, on the alternative side of these remedies, on the alternative side, almost everything leads back to diet from these chronic conditions. Every chronic condition can be at least improved by a dietary adjustment, especially if you're just on like the standard American diet, eating, you know, Cocoa Puffs for breakfast and
with Pepsi.
white bread for lunch. Yeah, anytime you're drinking Pepsi, you guys please stop drinking Pepsi. Like just stop. It's the Coke and Pepsi.
And they have like natural flavors, and I think you know what they are. Natural flavors.
Aborted fetal tissue.
What about the what is it? The beaver.
What beaver?
It's the anal gland of the beaver.
Oh, is that a natural flavor too?
Yes.
Wow, I hadn't even heard of that one, so that's new to me.
Yeah, so that's kind of nasty.
The beaver's anal gland is a natural flavoring ingredient.
I don't know. Is it the beaver? It's something.
And I mean, you don't even want to know what's in the artificial flavoring or like artificial coloring.
Right.
I mean, artificial coloring that's on here. That's, artificial coloring. It's not really big pharma necessarily, but like on this big pharma side, you're also getting some of like big agra and big
I think
food.
a lot of these people that run, like, they run the processed food. They weaponize our food, like all the processed foods. And we know who's behind that, pretty much. All these people that own these big corporations, and it all boils down to what? 3 families and one at the very top. According to your QMAP and the things that I've learned.
I know, like in the media, they say the media comes down to 6 companies. I'm not sure how many companies it is that like pharmaceutical food industry comes down to, but it's some small number, and they're all in alliance. The people making the pills to treat these conditions are completely in alliance, if not probably the same companies as the ones putting out the unhealthy foods that are causing these conditions. So it's just, they're making money hand over fist.
And it's not just, it's in our clothing as well. I saw a documentary, I think it was called What's That Smell? But a man had lost his wife, and he was buying his children some Christmas presents, and they opened their jammies, and they had this real toxic smell about them. So he took like the next 5 years trying to get to the bottom of what all that was about. So, there's toxins all around in our clothing, in our medicine, in our food.
I was just, I wore a shirt the other day that I had dry cleaned at like a Tide dry cleaner that's supposed to be like an organic, healthy dry cleaning.
Wow, I never
They've
heard of
supposed to
that.
have switched to like healthy stuff, but this shirt that I had cleaned there, like it smelled so strongly that I mean, they say they add some kind of fragrance to it, but I feel like even still, like even when they're saying it's a healthy dry cleaning technique, like there's some kind of chemicals in that.
Yeah.
And I think I was breaking out a little bit of like a rash like in the armpit, but it's just like, it's so hard to avoid chemicals. Like at one point, when I was having like eczema issues, which is actually one of the main health issues I had in the past, that
and a lot of our kids with autism have eczema, like most of our kids.
Just want to throw it out there that like the main eczema remedy I found that helped my eczema was MMS, Miracle Mineral Supplement, which is a hot topic that...
Yeah, it's been a hot topic.
Yeah, it's a very controversial remedy. It's probably most controversial used internally because it has some attributes of like pool water. But it's not the same chemical as like bleach. It's different, and it's more biosafe than actual like bleach. And it's actually, if you put like a spot of diluted bleach on your hand and a spot of diluted MMS on your hand, the bleach will irritate you where the MMS won't as much by a long shot. But anyways, I found that MMS worked just fabulously for my eczema. It was actually the only thing that I found really worked for eczema.
How did you stumble upon that remedy?
It was recommended to me by a colon hydrotherapist.
Wow.
Yeah. When I was in New York, I was having a lot of different health issues, and eczema was the main one. But I saw, I got colon hydrotherapy, and she recommended MMS for the eczema, and that's the one thing that worked, because basically all a dermatologist can recommend for eczema would be steroids. And I really strongly feel that if you use steroids on your eczema, all it does is make it come back stronger afterwards. Like, it'll clear it up for a day or 2 days, but then the eczema will come back worse than before and probably spread. And even putting steroids on your skin can have like a longer term carcinogenic effect.
Wow. So were you like fully vaccinated as a little kid?
I have no idea, to be honest.
Or is it
I don't
just
know what my vaccines was. I've definitely been declining any attempts by like doctors on, more recent visits to give me flu shots, any kind of vaccine really. Like I think they recommend, all these different vaccines for STDs and stuff, and I'm just like, I'll just be careful. But because it's like, I'm definitely not in a position to say whether like there's any truth behind vaccine science. I've definitely heard people say that the whole philosophy of vaccines doesn't really work, but then to me, there might be some truth in like the fundamental science of vaccines, but it all comes down to who's manufacturing them and what do they want to put in them, like what additives do they want to put in them, why are they putting in aluminum, why are they putting in formaldehyde? I mean, formaldehyde maybe to preserve it, but it's like, do we want that formaldehyde in our body?
And mercury and aborted fetal tissue.
Yeah, and all this stuff. So it's just like...
So that's like forced cannibalism, just like the, aborted fetal tissue in some of the products that we use every day.
Yeah, it is. It's so much comes down to just like who's manufacturing it, what is their intent, can you trust them? And in most cases the answer is no, because the only people at this point we really want to be trusting are, like organic farmers. Organic farmers. That's pretty much all you want to be putting in your body.
I have an apple tree, I have a peach tree, I have an avocado tree. I think I'm all set.
Yeah.
And I started my garden, I mean, I'm after my husband to dig a well because we know that the Rockefellers, they control most of the utilities, and they control the water.
Oh, well, yeah, the water supply is a huge issue. I mean, it's been pretty much established that the process of fluoridating water was developed by Nazis, and it has a documented scientific effect of like lowering IQ. So you definitely don't want to be drinking tap water.
And we heard Kennedy talk about the 7 points of IQ loss in this generation, these generations.
Oh, the Kennedy that spoke here.
Yeah.
What's his name? Robert
F. Kennedy Jr.
Robert F. Kennedy's here.
And he's
a huge vaccine advocate, or anti-vaccine.
Well, he's a vaccine safety advocate.
Safety.
Because in 1986, the Supreme Court ruled that vaccines were unavoidably unsafe, and he had a slew of moms coming to him and saying, "What about this mercury that's spewing from?" Well, he was onto the spewing of the mercury out of the power plants and stuff like that, and the mom says, "Well, what about these injections with straight mercury? 50%, like thimerosal is 50% mercury."
Oh, what's up with dentists like putting mercury in people's teeth for so many years?
Yeah, and they're still doing it. I see these little children.
Got a little dental section here with mercury fillings. I don't think they do mercury fillings quite as much anymore, but it's like it's clear that a lot of the pharmaceutical treatments that we're using today, or that we used in the recent past, they become outdated, and then we realize that they were unsafe. So, why would vaccines or why would any pharmaceutical today be any different? You at least have to question, if down the line we're going to say we were using that as a remedy,
Yeah.
Because, mercury is one example. And then something else that I've heard of that really kind of blew my mind that I'm not sure if too many people have probably heard of it were shoe fitting fluoroscopes. Have you heard of that?
No.
So back in, I think, probably like the 1950s, when you went to a shoe store, you would literally stand on an x-ray to look at your bones in a shoe, and like you're exposing your whole body to x-rays just to enjoy the process of buying and fitting a shoe, and it was totally unnecessary. So like obviously at some point they got rid of that, but it's just like the things that the technology industry and the health industry have exposed us to and not warned us about, it's just like there's no end to it.
Like with the Mad Hatter's disease, when they would make hats, they would like cure the beaver skins, I guess the rim of the hat, in mercury, and they would they would shape the hat, and it was called Mad Hatter's disease.
Really?
Because the mercury made them crazy. And then you had
I hadn't heard about that one. I'd actually like to write that down because that would be great for the antique
and
remedies.
There's Pink's disease, And that has it's the same as mercury poisoning. I mean, if you look at mercury poisoning and Pink's disease, it's all the same. And this one family ate this pig and they all died. So this pig was exposed to all this mercury. Anyway, the whole family died. So there's all kinds of...
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of go crazy worrying about environmental toxins, even including like...
bacon.
Bacon, yeah, I don't eat bacon. I think, you know, I don't think you should ever really cook anything that much. I'm freaked out now by anything that's like sitting in like boiling grease. Like when you see grease bubbling, I feel like that's
that's carcinogen.
That's a process that's creating carcinogens.
Yeah.
So now I cook my meat. Something I discovered since I was doing this diagram was this machine called a sous vide, which basically cooks. It's kind of like a slow cooker for meat, and like you put your meat in like some kind of a bag. Like I don't use a plastic bag because there's problems with plastic as well.
Plastic.
But I've been using a silicone bag. You submerge it in water, and it cooks meat slowly at a lower temperature, so that there's no burning. And it's supposed to be like the most bioavailable way to cook meat.
With the nutritions, keep all the nutrition,
With the nutrition still in there, yeah, and it can't burn it because it's just like in water. So there's all these new things people are discovering, and actually sous vide is a machine that's really only been available to normal people for a handful of years.
Really, I've never heard of it. Where do you find that at?
I bought it on Amazon. I think you can buy them at like Macy's or any like cookware store now.
Is it like $500?
You probably can't get one for $500, but I think most of them are under $100.
Oh, awesome!
So I discovered that, and like that's totally revolutionized the way I cook. And like I think even a lot of people, if they start cooking like that, could avoid a lot of like carcinogenic acrylamides from like overcooking, heat. Well, that's just one thing, like how technology can help us become healthier and, you know, cook our food in healthier ways.
So what do you think of our conference so far?
I think it's great. You know, I think it's awesome that we have like a mainstream conference that's really delving into truth advocacy. I think a lot of people that are coming here obviously are coming because they've had an interaction or a child with autism that they didn't ask to be a truther. They didn't ask to have to deal with all of these negative consequences, but they've been sucked into it. And so it's great that we have people who are standing ready to serve the truth and to serve good information to people who have unwittingly been drawn into this battle.
Right. And there's so many people in our community that they volunteer whatever their expertise is to help other people.
And so like what I've seen at this conference, because I know like I'm live streaming this, I know you are too, but like it's mainly like people advocating CBD, people advocating diet, people advocating different health products. Then obviously all the speakers that are dealing with different parts of like the autism experience. Actually, something I want to ask you that might be interesting, sort of merging these two worlds, is in the QAnon world, people talk a lot about autists, and autists like deciphering QAnon posts, autists deciphering like cryptography. So like, how does that world of like, I guess you'd call that like a high-functioning autist?
Well, the thing about autism is, like my kid, he perseverates on his interest. So people that might be interested in the QAnon posts, and they can decipher all that, code. Like my kid he's a bug expert, and he just can't get enough learning about bugs. I mean, he knows all the scientific names, he thinks that he's discovered new bugs, and he probably has, because he knows so much about that subject that he's a wealth of information, and he's like he's got a doctorate in bugs. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that's called. But he perseverates on things that he's very interested in. So if that's all you do 24/7, 365, you're going to master that. And it's going to come very naturally to you to just decipher that very quickly and know what's up. So that's where that comes from, because these people perseverate on that subject and they don't let it go till they find the answer.
Okay.
So that's how that. So some of our kids have these superpowers, and I think
So it can be definitely like a handicap in a lot of ways, but it can also be sort of an asset in some
right.
ways. No?
Well, when you get mercury in the brain, it fries all those brain cells. Anything that it touches or the pathway through, it kills all those cells. So I don't know if it's theory, I don't know if it's fact, but I've heard people talk about when one area of the brain is injured, it overcompensates in another area, and so that expertise of that other area is just blown way out. So, you overcompensate in another area and you become very good at that skill or that interest. So that's how that
it's
fits into all
not exactly
that.
something you want to have happen, but
No.
maybe there could be like a...
You can write this incredible, you have a photographic memory of New York City and you're able to put it on paper, like every single detail, but you can't bathe yourself,
Yeah.
So that's, my son's a 4.0 and he's a bug expert, but he can't wash his own hair, So
It's definitely a very like diverse condition and probably confusing condition for a lot of people that don't have firsthand experience with it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to it. I mean, we've talked about all kinds of stuff here at the conference, and I just interviewed the chiropractor. Like, our kids are either hyposensitive or hypersensitive, and they're in that fight or flight all the time. So they need heavy pressure to calm them down, to bring them back, instead of hand flapping and causing self-injurious behavior, and some of our kids are so spun they can't focus. They can't, unless they're really interested in something, but they're taking in so much.
Like the whole epidemic of ADHD, ADD, which is sort of something I grew up with more. Like, I feel like now it seems like more kids have autism, but like when I was in high school, it's just like everyone was on Ritalin for ADHD. And I feel like a lot of the factors with that are like very much, TV, EMFs, definitely sugar. It's like some really obvious stuff that like makes you hyper that, we'd rather put people on a medication than just like take away these stimulants that are ubiquitous.
Well, I knew a mom next door, her son had ADHD, and she would rather give her son psychotropic drugs so her life could just be normal. So the kid went all through school, and he was picked on because he didn't grow, and he never had an appetite. And so all the kids bullied him. He was real small because he was always on those psychotropic drugs, and he didn't want to eat.
Oh, God,
But they wanted their life to just be normal. They just kind of wanted to sweep it under the rug and mask the problem. But that's a personal choice, and everybody has their own cross to bear, and they have their own decisions to make for their family.
Yeah.
But I would rather get to the root of the problem. And
I think for me, like that TV and like video games is like a big issue for that type of thing, because it's like now that I don't really watch TV, like anytime I'm even around a TV, I'm like hypersensitive to just like how obnoxious it is, and like every time it switches from one image to another, that triggers something in your brain that like sort of like it's like a reset, like every time it's a scene cut. So it's like the more TV you watch, the more scatterbrained you're going to be.
I know, I become very agitated with the TV. My husband likes to watch TV, so all day long I'm home by myself doing my advocacy work and talking to people and doing whatever I do. Nothing all day. And then he comes home and he turns on the TV, and I find it
changes the vibe.
It's like,
especially if you put on the
agitating.
news, right?
It's very agitating. And I can listen to YouTube all day long, but I can't
YouTube
listen.
is fine.
And then you get, CNN, and you want to throw your dishes at it.
It's so mind control. Like, it's so like engineered with like decades of like MK Ultra engineering.
That's why they call it programming.
Yeah. Exactly.
So turn off your mainstream media and turn on alternative news.
Yes.
and get the real truth.
YouTube.
And if you don't believe it, go look it up. Go search for yourself. You find the answers. And that's why we have Autism One, because we can get so many different perspectives on what we can do, different ways of helping our kids, because it's not just one thing that's going to help our kid. There's a bunch of different things, and we need to find our way through that. And chiropractic's a really good place to start. A clean diet is another really good place to start. And just having a safe, secure, comfortable home for your kid, and just trying to be centered in yourself. So the more you are centered in yourself, the better you'll be able to help your children. I knew a long time ago that if I was in a rotten mood, my kid was going to be in a rotten mood. So the first thing I had to do was check myself and get myself together, and then he would function better.
A lot of the remedies or the treatments that might be helpful that we're seeing here are really more like lifestyle changes, which is a lot more difficult for someone to think about implementing as opposed to just starting to take a medication. But on the other hand, once you're doing the lifestyle, you're not going to be thinking you're like trying to implement something, So it might be really hard to get into it, but once you're into it, you don't have to really think about like, oh, well, we need to do this every day, because that's just your lifestyle.
And once you're motivated, once you learn more about it, and you're more motivated to go through with it, and you understand all the reasons why, it makes it so much easier. And you're more motivated to live clean, because it's so easy. Just just pop culture.
It's not always easy. Like with the diet I'm on now, like I've had to bring like a cooler to the hotel with me, and like I'm eating like specific foods, and it's just it's a lot. That's a lot more difficult than just going to McDonald's, but it's worth it in the end, because I'll have an easier time digesting it than if I were to go to McDonald's.
Yeah, and I just
so you can either do the work on the front end or the work on the back end.
Yeah, come to find out, I've always kind of eaten the keto way. I don't eat a lot of carbs. I eat a lot of fat. I love sugar. That's my problem. But
and you have a great body, so.
Well, I'm old, and I'm not like out of shape.
You look like you're in great shape.
I'm very active. I'm never just sitting still. I'm always doing something. I'm always motivated to move. But I had a boyfriend once. He didn't want to be with me anymore because I didn't want to get up on Sunday morning and run on the beach. It's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to run.
I do a little bit of running, but I think people that get obsessed with running, like marathon level running, or just like running every day, I think that has negative health consequences. I think maybe a little bit of running when you feel like you need to run. When you feel like a couch potato, get out and run. But
yeah, and I think a big part of being healthy is being happy.
It is.
We need comic relief. We need to smile. We need to have positive thoughts. We can't be angry. We have to be forgiving, and we have to just walk away from people that trigger us.
Definitely. There's a huge psychological component. You need to change your life to be such that you are generally happy, because chronic stress can lead to any of these chronic conditions easily.
Yeah, stress is one of the main problems, which brings us back to bacon. My friend told me that pigs don't sweat, so they don't get rid of any of those stress hormones or any of the muscle memory toxic stuff. If they've been mistreated or whatever, they can't get rid of that. So that's still all in that cell, and we're eating that food.
I buy it. I don't eat pork right now. I'm a Muslim. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not a Muslim, but pork's the one thing I kind of try to avoid, even though I do think it is probably the best tasting meat. But I've heard for several reasons that pork might not be the ideal meat to be consuming.
Well, I'm starting to really avoid it after I talk to my friend.
Yeah, if they don't sweat. Well, it's also like, what do they eat? Like, I feel like pigs will eat just kind of like anything.
Well,
so,
they do, yeah.
Yeah.
I've always wanted one of those.
And one other
pigs.
thing, this is kind of pushing it a little further than probably most people are ready to go, but I have a theory that humans might have some pig DNA, that whoever created us or however we came about, if we were genetically engineered or not, there might have been a little bit of monkey, a little bit of maybe pig, a little bit of alien, all in the mix. So eating pork might be a little bit like cannibalism in a way. I mean, they are the only other animal that is kind of furless with pink skin.
Yeah, but we would have had like autoimmune disease like a long time ago. I don't know.
Well, there's also the thing that they use like pig heart valves, and they use pigs when they do transplants, and so like there's a reason why pig tissue is compatible with humans, whereas
so are rats.
Even more compatible than like, I'm not sure if it'd be more compatible than a monkey, but you know, whatever, they use pig like valves and stuff for heart transplants.
We're not doctors or we're not MDs or PhDs. We're just pondering what we think we might know. So
just don't eat your little piglet cousins.
And don't eat your pets.
Don't eat your pets. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you know, in Asia, it's considered fine to eat a dog, whereas in America, it's like, eat a dog? Like, would you eat an animal? Would you eat your dog? But it's like, you know, I'm not saying you should eat dogs, but it's like, there's a lot of stuff that we've just been programmed with our culture that, you know, we think it's like a rock solid fact when it's really like, you only believe that because that's the culture you grew up in.
Right.
And, you know, I don't think people should eat dogs necessarily. I don't know. I mean, I didn't eat beef for a long time, but I started eating beef since November because, you know, like, when I have a lot of empathy for animals, and like I'm an intuitive empath, so like I really feel like I don't want to like put animals in pain or like have them live a miserable life. But you know, I started eating beef. When I started eating beef, like I'm only eating grass-fed beef, where I've actually seen like the cows on the pasture. Like I make sure they're living a happy life that like I want to. You know, I want to be in support of that happy life they're living, and that's what I'm comfortable with putting in my body.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So grass-fed beef. And you know, now like there's a lot of bone broth around here. Like I stopped eating meat for a long time because it just grossed me out. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we find that a lot of the bone broth is really good for cancer, really good for autism, because you get all that nutritional value.
Yeah, bone broth is good for a lot of things. I mean, common sense is good for your bones. Like, I've started thinking more and more about the idea of like, you know, you eat what you want to fix basically. So if you have like a joint pain, say connective tissue pain, you know, eat more cartilage, eat more joint tissue. This might not have any scientific validity. I'm more of, you know, I do have like a holistic mindset. So like, I think all Western medicine with like getting really deep into like molecular science and stuff, like, for one thing, that can just confuse the average person, but for another thing, like, they've completely led us awry to begin with. So, like, why should we trust all of their, like...
Yeah, we can't believe anything.
Why should we trust all their high-level science of, like, molecular stuff? Like, I feel like it might be good to go back to more of, like, an intuitive understanding of what we need for science. So, you know, it's like, if you want to build muscle, eat muscle. If you want to fix your joints, like, eat more, like you said, bone broth. Like, if you want to fix your bones, eat bone broth. So, I mean, to me, that's kind of like intuitive common sense.
Well, it seems like what Tesla said. You look for the vibrational, the vibration, and so that seems like it would energetically be true. Mm-hmm. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll ask Dr. Judy. I mean, there's a million people here we could talk to about this.
They probably know more than us, but...
Well, they probably do.
But we're pretty healthy. You know, we've gotten this far, and, you know, without too many chronic conditions, so...
Without too many. And, you know, we're semi-sane, I think. So, why don't we wrap it up? What else do you want to talk about? So anyway, we have a panel on Saturday. So if you're in the Chicago area, come over here to Autism One. We've got Dustin Nemos. We've got Dylan Lewis Monroe. We've got Travis Middleton, Del Bigtree, Billy DeMoss, chiropractor, CalJam. An awesome event in January. More holistic type healing.
So what time is the big picture panel on Saturday?
That is at 4:30.
At 4:30. And how much would it be to get a one-day pass to Autism One?
I don't know, but call me. I'm at...
$25.
CES Dave
It shouldn't be more than $25.
at autism1.com. I think that's my email. If you have any questions, you can call me or
We're at the
email
Lowe's
me.
Hotel
Lowe's in Chicago.
near the airport.
Lowe's Chicago O'Hare. We are here. We're jam-packed. There's tons of people here. It's Friday. Tomorrow's Saturday.
Everyone's learning.
Yeah. I mean, we're just kind of winging it over here. And we've got Mike. He's been working his booty off for 2 days solid. Come say hi, Mike. He's good. He probably needs some food.
All right.
Okay, so thank you so much for your time, and I'm so excited that you're here. We're going to have
Thank you
a
for
blast.
inviting me.
This is so much fun. Great minds think alike. See you
All
guys
right.
later. Oh, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And that way you'll be notified when more speakers come this way. So have a great day. We'll see you in about 5.